Hi, I'm Sandra Edwards. Welcome to the War Room, where we're positively changing the way women approach auto repairs. Today, I am so happy to be interviewing one of my new fast friends. I met her a couple of weeks ago, and she has a business that is just totally awesome. I love her energy. I just really can't wait to get into this interview, so I will start right now. To my right here is Molly Cantrell-Kraig, and she is the founder of a company called Women with Drive. Tell us about Women with Drive, Molly. Welcome to the show, actually.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sandra. Women with Drive was created as a way to really just give back and also to economically emancipate women. The number one reason welfare to work programs fail is lack of reliable transportation. Mm-hmm. And you and I met at the Chicago Auto Show.
Yes.
And I was so impressed immediately with what you're doing to help women with auto repair, because it's all about teaching someone and giving someone the tools to succeed. Absolutely. And giving them the ability to change course of her own life. And in the case of Women with Drive, it's literally providing a person with a car so that she can have that tool to economically emancipate herself. It's the number one reason welfare to work programs fail.
And I know that this program is near and dear to your heart because you've lived it.
Absolutely. Yeah, Women with Drive actually started because I was the woman we serve. Mm-hmm. I was living in a farmhouse in Iowa and with my mom, and I had a 4-month-old kid, and I was going to college, and I didn't have a car. So I had a friend of mine who drove me back and forth to school, and as I graduated and got into newspapers and whatnot and became successful in that field, I just got to a point where I knew that this was something that other women would need in order to succeed, so I created Women with Drive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are some of the hurdles that you had to go through to succeed in this business? Because obviously you've done a great job. You have accolades from everywhere, from ABC Chicago to Chicago Tribune to the Huntington Post, no less. You did a great job at getting the word out there. So I'm really excited that we can try to help you expand that the vision,
well,
if you will.
The thing about being in those other those outlets just speaks to the universal need for transportation. Absolutely. It is an absolutely national problem. And in terms of the hurdles that I overcame in order to get here, a lot of them were actually self-imposed, as I think a lot of our hurdles are. Mm-hmm. Mostly it was just my own courage and confidence to truly step out and in a leap of faith and take this action. Can I do it? Is it too big? Is it something that's actually needed? But I really think that if you've got an idea that is something that you feel compelled and called to do, I think that it's your obligation to see how to make it happen. And that first obstacle of just really trying and showing up and putting out that faith to see what's possible, and then letting things happen and being able to recognize opportunities and seize upon them and work with that opportunity is central to success. And that's how those other opportunities show up in your life.
And I think the one key thing is being prepared.
Come to it right.
Being prepared when the opportunity presents itself.
I think absolutely. Our part in any equation is doing the work on ourselves and asking for the ability to recognize opportunity when it comes, and then when something comes along, seize it. One of my sayings that I think I invented somewhere along the line is the best way to thank someone for giving you a chance is to take it.
Yep.
I
do
think
well with it.
Yeah, and that's what all people really want. And to pay it forward, which is what Women with Drive Foundation is. I believe that it's really. I love the quote by Michelle Obama that once you get to a point where you have succeeded, you don't shut the door.
Right.
You reach back.
Absolutely.
And you help someone else through, and you help someone else up. And that's what Women with Drive really is. It's a way to give back and to help economically emancipate other women who are like me, because I was her. And I think that we all need a little help once in a while, and being present for other people is how we pay. Well, who is it that says rent? Rent is, what is it? Service is the rent we pay. Who is that? Maya Angelou? Gosh darn it. Maybe. Someone will tell you. Someone will email you and tell you who quoted that. I know that that'll happen before this goes, over the airwaves or whatever. Someone will be tweeting to you right now, I'm sure of it.
Thank you. Yay. home.
Correct.
So I think what you do is awesome. I love it. And I'm just going to ask you, where did you get the idea for Women with Drive?
Well, I actually lived it. 27
Wow.
years ago, I was a single mom on welfare living in Iowa in my mom's farmhouse.
Wow.
And my daughter was 4 months old at the time, and I was going to school, and I didn't have a car. So I had a friend who was a welder who would drop me off at college 2 hours before classes started at a burger joint across from campus, and I would do my homework, and then when school was done, he'd pick me up, and I'd take care of my baby and start the whole thing over the next day. So there's so many women who are working hard, and they need that small little boost that a car provides so that she can literally change her future and the trajectory of where she's going.
Thank you so much for what you do, Molly.
You're welcome.
I've never heard of the concept before, but as soon as I met you and you told me what you do, it just went, oh,
Yeah.
like this is God sent. So
Yeah.
tell me about what type of hurdles have you had to, get over just life period.
Well, I think that part of the biggest hurdle as an individual before I started Women with Drive was having the confidence to take chances. And so once I actually started overcoming that confidence barrier and taking chances and moving forward in my career, it got easier and easier and easier. And then actually the reason Women with Drive was established is I have worked in media. I have a media background that includes radio and media publishing and things like that, advertising agencies. And I was working at an advertising agency, and on Friday the 13th, we had lost a major client.
Wow.
So 4 of us were let go. On Friday the 13th, I lost my job, which was exciting in retrospect. But the day that I lost my job, I called my friends and was looking for a job in media again. Hey, can you hook me up? And one of my friends said, you should start that nonprofit you're talking about. And so I was really pushed out of the nest. So the biggest hurdle in that case was just taking that action, because I think a lot of people stay trapped in fear or the what ifs or what can go wrong, and sometimes I think when you're pushed into a situation where it's sink or swim, you're going to find out what's possible in a short order, and that's what happened with Women with Drive.
It's funny that you say that, because I've talked to a lot of people about their businesses and how they got to where they are, and a lot of times it's just life. Letting them know that it's time to do it. You know what I mean? Because as human beings, we tend to procrastinate, and we have an idea and we keep it and we hold on to it. And I'm going to do this one day. And it's like life just says, okay, today is the day. Click. And it'll just put you in a circumstance where you have to say, okay, am I going to do this now? So it really ends up being a leap of faith.
Exactly. Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. But the thing that's really funny about the leap of faith thing is that there's a quote that Ray Bradbury has about leap and then your wings will form. And for me, the wings are always going to be the network that you've been building without knowing you've been building it, by becoming who you're supposed to be. And then when you take that leap of faith, those wings form around you because they're the friends. Well, this show is an example of that. Once you make an action, things come around to make sure that that's something you're supposed to be doing.
To add to that.
Sure.
It's funny to me how people, they won't do things because they always say, well, I don't know how I'm going to do this.
Yeah, you'll learn.
You will. The how is always something that keeps people from doing the thing that God created them to do.
Agreed.
And I always say, stay in your lane.
Yep.
The how is not you. That's not your lane. You're just supposed to prepare yourself so that when the opportunity presents itself, you're ready.
You can step into
because
it.
if you don't, then you prolong that opportunity presenting itself.
Exactly.
So I think it's really important to just pay attention to life. Do you know what I'm saying? And not
Absolutely.
always be, because people are very quick to not want anything bad to happen to them. No, that's not what you want necessarily. Because sometimes bad lessons are in bad things.
They're tucked into those bad.
They're tucked into those bad things. So you want to, I will say this all the time, you want to fail fast.
Yep.
You want to make sure if you go through something, get the lesson out of it so that you can move on. So tell me this. What inspired you to choose Chicago to come and expand Women with Drive?
Well, I think the number one reason for me was that prior to starting the organization, I worked in clean tech and biofuels when I lived in Iowa, so I was doing a lot of business in Chicago regardless.
Okay.
And so I was very familiar with the town, and it's the third biggest city in the world, and I'm calling it a town. But what was also really important to me, because I've been to LA, I've spoken in New York City, and I love both of those cities, but there's a specific type of vibe that's here in Chicago that allows organizations like ours to flourish, because Chicago is very much a city that will understand the power of incubation and say, okay, you got a great idea, how can we make it work? Let's work together to make this happen. So there's this optimistic pragmatism that exists here in Chicago as a vibe. And then in terms of the actual resources and bricks and mortar and nuts and bolts of an organization, it has all of the variables needed to solve the problem of mobility. Because, again, the number one reason welfare to work programs fail is lack of reliable transportation. So in Iowa, that had to take the shape of a private vehicle. But in Chicago, as you said, there's some people who might not need a car all the time. They may need a zip car. They may need a Lyft or another car-sharing device. One of our recipients is a welder. So, yeah, she needs an actual car because you can't take your welding stuff on the train with you. But I knew that there were enough variables and enough organizations and enough brains in Chicago to make it happen. So that's why we showed up. That's why we're here.
Great. Well, I know that you were chosen as CNN's top 10 visionary women.
That's correct.
Tell us about that.
Well, I think I was talking about this with someone earlier in terms of how do you go viral or how do you make something happen. And I think that to reverse engineer any of your actions with the understanding of how am I going to make myself go viral, you're never going to go viral. When you pay attention and stay in your lane and do your job the way you're supposed to do it, that gives off a vibe and it gives off an energy and it creates a light so that you become something and someone that other people notice. And I was I had a friend of mine who was in CNN, but I was actually just an associate for a while. And in January of 2014, he sent me an email that said, hey, we had an editorial board meeting for International Women's Day coming up in March, which was again in 2014. So it's got a special day for me. And he says, we were talking about people we could honor as part of women who were making things happen. Oh, wow. And I brought up your name. So you may get a call from someone. And I ended up going through the vetting process, and that's what happened. But it wasn't me coming up to Chicago saying, I'm going to be on CNN someday. Right. It was me busting my butt and doing my job and making sure that I was creating value. And that got noticed.
Yeah.
So you just do the best you can where you are with what you have, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. The universe will.
But and I was very honored, and not to minimize anything about that. Yeah. It's an extreme honor, and it was really surreal to see my face on the homepage of CNN for a while. That was pretty bizarre, but also very cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, to Molly's credit, she's actually an author as well. Tell us about your book.
Well, thank you. It's called Life in the Driver's Seat, Women with Drive and Beyond. And so what happened was, again, as I began Women with Drive, because I have a media background, I used to serve on a lot of boards and was always in the position of the media person on the board because that's what I understood. That was my background. And so I didn't really know a lot about forming a nonprofit. So I learned the hard way a lot of times. There was a lot of our lessons that I learned the hard way, which is, again, that lesson is sometimes tucked into bad things. But so many people were asking me, how did you start it? Why did you start it? What's your thing about how is it like a business? And how is it like a startup? And how is it like social entrepreneurism? And so I put together an e-book, it's a small book that's a quick read, but it's an amalgamation of stories and observations about what it's like to go out and start something on your own. Because the other thing that's interesting about our book, or my book rather, is that it talks about stories about me in Iowa, and it also talks about those lessons that entrepreneurs face on the day before payroll, and you're wondering how you're going to make this happen, or you're also wondering why you started this road. So all these are stories that are also going to appeal to people who are going through anything different or a pivot. And then the other thing that's central about Women with Drive is that we approach the women we partner with as entrepreneurs.
Okay.
They are the CEO of you. And so the book is also very much a part of taking ownership for one's own direction. You cannot go anywhere as long as you're assigning blame or your energy to an outside party. Yeah. But when you take ownership of putting yourself in the driver's seat of your life, you have a capacity and ability to actually direct where you want to go. So That's also part of the book as well.
Amen. Wow.
Yeah.
I just think what you do is awesome. I know it's definitely needed. Tell me how the audience can learn more about the Women with Drive Foundation?
Okay, well, I have a website for myself. And
Okay, what's your web address?
Well, my web address is mollycantrell-kraig.com. So that's just how my name is spelled, no dashes, no nothing, just mollycantrell-kraig.com. And on the top nav, there's a link to the Women with Drive website. And there's also some information on my website about my story and some other things about how I got myself to Chicago. But womenwithdrive.org is our website specifically about the organization, and that's going to have information about the statistics, about who we serve, why we're there, how your work benefits women here in Chicago. Some of our recipients thus far are a welder, a nursing student. Some of their stories are going to be uploaded here soon, so it may not be out there, but you'll be able to see a good snapshot of how we work.
Great.
Yeah.
That's going to be awesome. I will definitely stay tuned to your website. So you know that Talking Carz, they support the soldiers' family.
Yes.
So I would really appreciate it, because I'm a veteran as well, if you could give a shout out to our women and men in uniform.
Oh, I'd love to. Well, not only now, I mean, because I have three cousins who serve they're in the armed forces, in the Air Force.
Amen.
But I also have a couple friends of mine who are in the Navy, who I respect what veterans and people who are currently serving. It is an absolute sacrifice. It's an absolute sacrifice, and also the sacrifices that are made by their families. Yes. Because when those families are without a mom or without dad, because he or she is in, like the Coast Guard or the National Guard, if they're not at home, the people they live with are also making a sacrifice. So it's a very much a group effort, and I know that there's also a lot of veterans who are either underemployed or unemployed, and so they would absolutely be welcome to work with. One of the reasons we moved to Chicago is to partner with organizations who can help us identify individuals like veterans who are ready to contribute in a different way, and they just need that tool of mobility to truly get where they want to go.
So what would you like to say to the troops?
Thank you, for one, is always my first, is thank you for your service. Thank you for being willing to put yourself on the line for the rest of us. That's something that's, I think, really important. And that it's a big responsibility to put on that uniform. And I think it's something that people don't do lightly. And I just wanted to let you all know that I respect that and I appreciate it.
And as a military veteran, your appreciation is appreciated. This is Sandra Edwards, and I just want to say what I always say. America is the home of the free because of the brave. Please, at some point, whenever you can, take time to thank a service member, a veteran, a policeman even. We love you all. We may not be able to identify you all, but we owe you all. Thank you for stopping by. See you next time.